listeners, and welcome to Day 3 of CAM's Study Abroad Conference. So before we begin with the session, let's have a short kamustahan. Fill in the blanks. My night last night was blank because blank. Please type your answers in the chat box. And okay, so I'll start first. My night last night was good because I was able to rest after that whole week of work. How about you, Razel?
So sad, but I'm taking classes right now, so my night last night was spent doing my essay. Super sad.
Good luck. I'm so sorry. How about the rest? Yeah, the grind never stops. Okay. Okay, so just put your answers in the chat box. My night last night was blank because blank. And we'll try to read your answers. Okay, so everyone, I'm Rheign, the speaker manager for Camp Philippines this year, and I'll be your host for this session. So welcome back to Day 3 of Pathfinder Trekking to College, a conference designed to inspire and guide Filipino students who are aspiring to study abroad. Come join us as we delve into engaging discussions, informative talks, and unlock a world of endless possibilities at CAM Study Abroad Conference brought to you by LIMS Review Center, the Princess Review Philippines, AUG Philippines, and AUCC Philippines. So thank you so much for coming to this session. So this session speaker will give some tips and key considerations when writing college essays, from selecting prompts down to writing style and tone. She will discuss her understanding of college essays and what makes a good one, as well as the resources she used in writing hers. So before we proceed with the talk, let's lay down the house rules once more. So first, please do not spam the Q&A box or send any inappropriate messages. Second, everyone at camp is working very hard to make your conference experience amazing. Please be respectful at all times. And third, all questions must be sent in the Q&A box. Questions in the chat box might get lost in all the messages. Now that we have all the house rules, allow me to introduce our speaker for this session. Okay, so today's first speaker is a political science intensive major at Yale University, a human rights scholar under Yale Law School, Yale journalism scholar. She specializes on development in post-conflict states and studies how peace building can prevent conflict recurrence with a focus on the Philippines. She has worked in the Executive Office of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, the House of Representatives, as a consultant for peace building and youth affairs, the Department of Justice, Department of Foreign Affairs, Raptor, ABS-CBN News, among others. During her years at Yale, she has held the positions of co-president for the Migration Alliance at Yale, formerly the Yale Refugee Project, co-director-in-chief of the Yale Human Rights Journal, and the president of the Sycamore Institute Foreign Policy think tank. She was also a member of the Yale University varsity cheerleading team. Please help me welcome Razel Suansing, everyone. Hi, Razel. So nice to see you here.
Hi, Rain. Nice to meet you too.
Okay, you can have the floor.
Okay, great. So today, I will be discussing just like my experience and what I've learned from other people about writing your college essays, which I personally think is the most important part of the college application process. Um, yeah, I kept hearing when I was in high school that SAT scores and GPA was just a benchmark, and this was like the time that you really prove to colleges that you deserve to get in and why they should take you over the other thousands of applicants that apply. I'll also be talking about the letters of continued interest for people that get waitlisted. So I put my own house rules as well. So I'm gonna be discussing a lot about my personal life and because it's a personal statement. So I request that all discussions in the session be confidential about my experience, but then you can take away other things. There will be times I also kind of request for participation, so you can unmute yourself or just put your answers in the chat. Okay, so from my experience, I will be talking about the Common App essay, the supplements for each college in the United States, and then for Europe and Asia, and also North America, Canada specifically, we also have the personal statement and letter of continued interest. So I'm just gonna dive right into it. The Common App essay, if you are applying to colleges in the US, most likely they will use the Common App, aside from maybe Georgetown, who has like their own personal statement. So this is an essay that you send to almost every college because a lot of the colleges in the US use the Common App. And you essentially get to choose from 8 prompts, but they all have the same goal, which I think is to provide a philosophical insight into who you are. Because this is a very unique essay because you send it to multiple colleges. So you have to kind of really prove who you are. And this is like often the first thing that the college admissions officers read, but it depends for each college. So the key question is what makes you special and why should we admit you, even though the prompts are different? But this is really the time that you differentiate yourself. And as opposed to other essays, it should be a narrative style. So it's like more literary techniques. We'll discuss this later with some of the essays that we'll talk about. Um, and since the college admissions officers probably read thousands of this a day, or hundreds at least, you should make sure that you make it enjoyable for your admissions counselors to read by incorporating those literary techniques. So I'm talking about there's usually an overarching theme or allegory or just the use of literary devices like dialogue and different forms of imagery. Um, and you shouldn't worry if you don't have a lot of experience with this. I feel like our counselors at camp are able to help you with that. And you have to choose a theme that you want all the colleges to know. So this shouldn't be uh, kind of repeated in your other supplements. And it's often your longest essay, so you have to choose a topic that you really care about because it's around, I think, 700 words, and something that you need space to write about that you can't write about in your other supplements because you don't have the space or the word count for it. So the general theme of the Common Up essay is like a typical narrative essay. So you have a hook, and then you introduce your theme, which is kind of the most important part of the essay. And then the theme is kind of incorporated throughout the story, and it's more of like a narrative story. And then you also incorporate dialogue somewhere in there. And then after that whole story and narrative, you reflect on that experience and what it's taught you and how it's made you who you are and how you're special from like all the other applicants, and then you'll have like a full circle conclusion. So since my Common App essay is like a little too personal, I wanted to take one of the more famous Common App essays. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called I Hate the Letter S, and then we're going to discuss how these elements are present in each. Um, so I don't know if my sound is sharing, so maybe I'll stop sharing and reshare my screen. Okay, let's hope it shares the sound. Mm, Okay, this one. Can we hear the sound or not? Can I hear it in the comment? Are we hearing the sound? Okay. I'm not sure why it's doing that. It's not allowing me to share my sound too. Mm, that's so weird. Mm, I'm not sure why it's not sharing the sound. um, Oh, you can hear it now? Okay, great, great. So, okay, because it's not letting me click the box where you have to share the sound. Okay, let's see. You can also just read from, I can also just share the video, but you can also read from, because the subtitles are there anyway. Okay. Okay, so
Okay,
I'll
so
like
I'll like.
walk through, hear myself echoing. Okay, there. So I will, yeah, so I'm going to talk about each part of it. So the introduction is really unique because I personally haven't read an essay like this. So because I think something that is like really difficult when you're in the college application process is kind of like finding a gimmick or like a cool introduction. So if a college admissions officer reads this, obviously they'll be like, "Why do you hate the letter S?" And then they'll be like really interested. And even though they've been reading essays the whole afternoon, they'll stop and read yours really carefully. Um, but sometimes it doesn't even have to be this unique. Sometimes it can just be kind of imagery or something that's very unique to you. So she even says in her application that a lot of people have lost their parents in the past, but then the way she just wrote it in her essay made it really special to her, or just like had a very unique take on a topic that is shared by a lot of people. So if you see the essay, if she wrote this any other way, I feel like it wouldn't stand out because what she's like saying in her application, I feel like it's a very, um, I think it's a very typical profile for someone who applies to Harvard, um, which is it's very difficult because everyone who applies to Harvard, a lot of people are like very exceptional. But the way she framed herself and packaged kind of her experience is very unique. Even though she says she goes to volleyball practice and like all these other extracurriculars, it didn't seem very generic just because of the way she packaged it. And it seems like because of the way she wrote it, it seems like she could have written this essay, which is something that you have to constantly think about when you're writing all your essays, and especially your Common App essay, because they read so many of them. How could I write something that's only unique to me? And if the admissions officer blindfolds themselves and like switches around the essay, they would need to know that you wrote that essay because of how unique it is to you. I think this is so interesting because um, I feel like she tackles head on what I feel like a preconceived notion of a college admissions officer will have about this person in this essay, where at first I feel like I feel like you've heard this so many times, but the biggest, I guess, issue of a lot of people when they apply to college, especially when they're midway through high school, is that they just do all the things possible and they're like really overstretched, and they don't have a spike. So it's actually interesting how she tackles that in the essay where she says, I kept juggling a bunch of these um, colored balls, and then like now I decided that I will chase like a passion, like which is a double S. So it still goes in the essay, but it's so interesting how she's like underlyingly telling the admissions officer that I'm not like one of those people who doesn't have a spike. Now I can like pursue my real passion. So that's really interesting. Okay, so I hope everyone kind of read that and it was an okay pace. Um, I Let me reshare my screen. I really like the theme of the essay. Um, but personally, I think it's an amazing essay and it's written really well. And I think the kind of gimmick of the S made it really unique. Um, and it's very commendable because I mean, it's really hard to write a college essay and like have a deep reflection of who you are when you're so young. So I really commend this person. But the only thing I would change would be, well, she said that she tackled a new S, which is passion, but I don't really know what she's passionate about, which I think is very important for me as a college admissions officer, for example. And I think the biggest thing when you're in this process that you have to think of like a college admissions officer, unfortunately. So they are looking for people that will be prominent alumni in the future. So it's really important for you to show them that not only that you're really successful already, but that you will be exceptionally successful over the other candidates that they could possibly take. So from this essay, I know she's passionate about something and she's motivated, but I don't really know what she's motivated about or what her passion is. So generally the gimmick, the hook, the story, the literary elements are very well written, but I would just improve more on the reflection and theme part of it, and really try to stand out and just be more specific to her own person. And the last thing is that she did have a first full circle conclusion about how she was trying to run away from the letter S, but now, like though she doesn't entertain it, this is something she's just come to terms with. So I like how it follows the structure really well. It just lacks kind of that key theme. Um, and I feel like the essay had a lot of potential. And if she had an amazing theme or something that I guess is more unique and is not a usual theme in college admissions essays, then it would be better. Okay, make sure you track your questions because I'd love to leave a lot of space in the end for questions. Um, So the I think most important essay for colleges, especially if you're applying to really competitive ones, is the college supplements. Um, and I will talk about a few examples. So, I mean, in the very prestigious universities, it's very important, but also in a lot of T20 universities, because I feel that you've heard, I don't know if you've all heard of the term yield protecting, but some of them um, choose to reject or waitlist really qualified candidates because they want to have higher retention rates, or kind of the people who get admitted also accept the offer, so they yield protect a lot. So that these supplements are really important to show that you're not just applying to them as kind of a target school or like a safety school, but you really, really want to go to this college. So this is super important. And I would say if you have a dream college or dream 2 to 3 colleges, then I would spend a lot of time on this essay and supplements, because I think it takes a lot of research to what I put here, thoroughly research more normative philosophies of what colleges' ethos are, what the college's ethos is, sorry. But for example, like Yale was one of my dream colleges, so I spent a lot of time talking to people that have gone into Yale, and I would say what makes Yale unique, what is a very Yale thing, that makes sure that my supplements aren't generic. So I would kind of use all these responses that I would get and then put them together and write down what I think the college's ethos is. And sometimes you'll find it in the mission statement, but then sometimes the mission statements are just more flowery. So it's really nice to hear it from people who actually go to those colleges. And it has to be as detailed as possible. I will show you the example later. And with Yale, there were 7 supplemental questions, which is a lot. And then there is a portion where you can only write 20 characters, which I thought was horrible because I like am not a very succinct writer. So even with those little quips, you have to show um, who you are and have a story throughout your application, but don't repeat the same topics. So I'll show you an example later. And also be yourself, especially with these like quippy short essays. It's like so hard to, because you're always pressuring yourself to be unique, but then don't be too cheesy about it and try to be more unique with your answers. Okay, so this is a part of one of my Yale essays. So, if you see here, it's super detailed, um, like why rise, and then you have the refugee project, which I ended up working with, and No Lost Generation, which is organizations, and also Whitney Humanities Center's exhibit. And now that I am at Yale, I feel like these things are like so different and from different departments. So I think it was interesting for my admissions counselor to see that I wanted to do all of this and I've done my research, which I think is really the most important thing, especially if you apply to these really difficult, prestigious colleges. And I it's not as evident here, but throughout my application, I talked a lot of what I eventually did, and I'm still studying, which is so I'm from Mindanao, and I and my parents work there, so I have this kind of um, vision that I wanted to combine multidisciplinary fields to aid in the peace process and development and post-conflict development in Mindanao. And so I wrote about that in why do you want to major in ethics, politics, and economics? And then I explained that there, but then also here, it's like the question is why Yale, essentially, which is such a hard question. But then as you see here, I talk about kind of Yale's ethos, which is the spirit of collaboration and global citizenship. And then you also have people who are simultaneously bewildered by the complexities of their own identities, because I think Yale, as opposed to, I feel like I couldn't have written this for other Ivies because Yale is very uniquely strange in that its students do very different things. Um, I know a lot of people who are doing mechanical engineering, but are also in a cappella, but then are also in the salsa group. So we have a lot of those students at Yale, and that's a very unique thing that Yale that is like a Yale student characteristic that I've only found out with a lot of research, but mostly talking to people that go to Yale. Um, so as you see here, I really tackle what I thought was the college's ethos. That doesn't look like it was just copied from the mission statement. It looks like it was a lot of research and then also very detailed, specific examples. So they know I really took the time to research Yale. And then as you see here, this is like very quippy. This is like 20 characters. So I have what would you hope your suite mates add to your experience? And I said, midnight philosophical exchanges, create hymns enriched by contrasting individual tones and unanticipated cadences. Suite mates would be my partners in intellectual discovery. We'd breathe life into the positivity of mixed company. So this is also an example of how I had a story all throughout. I'm so sorry, but I had a story all throughout, but I was kind of not repeating the same thing. So I talk also in one of my essays in the supplements that I was really interested in political theory and how I really wanted to pursue that in college. So, and also philosophy. So I like put that a little of that in here, but then also I didn't talk about the fact that I love to sing and did a lot of show choir in my high school years. So this was kind of the my admissions officer knows that just through the activities, but I was able to kind of incorporate that a little here. And Yale is really famous for its a cappella scene. So Mixed Company is actually one of the a cappella groups. So it just shows like a lot of research, but then also shows how I have a story and how my application fits in. And it's really interesting because it's also like simultaneously around this, like with these other essays that seem really different. Okay, let me look at the time. Um, I'm kind of like going to run past this a little, just so we have time for questions. But so the personal statement is more famous in the UK and then also Europe. I applied to Columbia Sciences Po, which is a really cool program. You should all look into it, but it's a dual degree from Columbia University and also Sciences Po, which is a super reputable university in political science. I think arguably the top three in the world or Europe for political science. Um, so that's a super cool program, and you get to spend 2 years in France and then 2 years in New York. But anyway, so I had to write a personal statement for that, which is kind of quite different from the all of the other essays I had to write for the other US colleges. So I would describe it as a combination of the Common App, supplements, and your resume, but don't restate your resume. Explain why the program fits your goals, and how your experience can enrich the community and also matches with the program. You have to be more direct with this one. Don't waste that many words being poetic about it because most of the time you'll only have this essay to submit to them. They don't have a lot of supplements sometimes. Um, I guess like some of the Oxford and Cambridge programs do, but most of the times they don't. So you only have this like 900 word essay to kind of shoot your shot at the universities. So it's a little bit more pressure, I would say. And then I'm gonna show it real quick and then go back to so, as you kind of see here, it's like very direct. So you see kind of these three elements. Yeah, so kind of these three elements of what I was talking about. So I talk about here how I wanted to pursue international human rights law, which is not what I want to do anymore. But I talk about how the academic nature of Sciences Po, which is very different from Columbia, but will aid me in having a strong foundation in law. And then I talk about how the academic aspects individually would help me. So there's the economic side, sociology, etc. And that was really important to them because Columbia and Sciences Po have two very different curricula. And you have to show them why you essentially need both of them, not just one. And I also talked about kind of my personal experience, and how I came of age at a time where uh, the Filipinos were losing faith in the integrity of international tribunals, um, and how I oppositely wanted to pursue international law and how that affected me. So that's all also like very personal. And then, as you see here, I also talk about uh, Columbia and like the Yale supplement is also super detailed and very specific. I talk about all these underlined aspects are like things that I wanted to pursue at Columbia. So these are courses. This is a think tank. This is Trial Watch, which is run by Mal Clooney, and a bunch of professors. And I also talk about how what my experience will bring to the community. So it's a lot to do in one essay. I mean, you only have one essay to send them, so it's like usually more work than the individual essays. And I will also talk about. Hmm, There. The letters of continued interest really quickly. So this is usually sent when you're waitlisted to one of the schools you really want to get into. So its goal is to re-emphasize why you want to attend this university and only this university. So it's kind of a more intense supplement because you really have to show them why you exactly fit with these specific reasons, with these specific aspects of the college. And you also have to update them about what you've done in the last semester since applying. So a lot of people, I would just say, what it's very typical to have senioritis, but then some people just kind of don't keep the same pace that they've been keeping in the last 4 years. And then once they get waitlisted, they panic because now they only have 1 month to create a project. So I would just say keep it up. I know it's so hard to hear, but just keep it up all throughout the year, just in case you have to write these letters of continued interests. And hopefully you will be keeping it up because you actually are very passionate about these things that you're doing and not just doing them for the college process. And then you also have to update them on usually why your application is more improved than when you sent them. So you can say like, I have a higher grade in this now. I got this internship offer for the summer, and now I've been doing this project. So that's the purpose of that. And it's usually kind of strongly worded, not strongly worded, but more strong than the supplements because now you're really, really asserting that you want to go to that university over others. And then if they give you an offer, you're going to accept it 100%, but don't plead, obviously. Yeah. And the last thing I will say before we have questions is that you should use these essays as a way to tell your story, and you only get to apply to college once, so enjoy the process. And I honestly think this process, I am a firm believer that this process happens really early, and it's still insane to me how we're expected to understand or to know what we want to do with the rest of our lives at such a young age. So don't pressure yourself. But I thought I just saw this as, in retrospect, a really good way to learn more about myself and to really discover what makes me unique. And it's really fulfilling at the end of the day because now you know what makes you unique, and like you don't hinge your identity and your self-worth so much in your college acceptances. So I hope this was really informative, and I'll leave the rest of the time for questions.
Okay, so thank you so much, Razel, for giving our attendees the knowledge they need to create an essay that encapsulates their best features as well as what to include in a letter of continued interest. So before we close this session, let's open the floor for a Q&A session. Please, everyone, remember to send your questions in the Q&A box and not the chat box. Okay. So right now, no one has sent their question. So we'll ask few questions from the camp team first. Okay, so for the first question, is it logical to reuse essays?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Is it logical to
Reuse essays.
reuse essays in Oh, for different colleges?
Yeah.
Okay, I would say no because I've had a lot of horror stories from other people that I know where they reuse the essays, and then for example you're applying to Boston College and then it says like Babson College and it's like just horrific. So I would really, really thoroughly read through it, and even though you apply to like 10 universities or 20, hopefully you're not applying to 20 universities, that's a lot. But yeah, it's just so much it's just like you have to really have that attention to detail to make sure. But most likely, you will kind of reuse your essays anyway because um, you would want to have the same major in mostly all of your colleges, or sometimes not, but most likely than not, you will. And you will kind of reuse the stories you're using, but just try to tailor it definitely in the details. So, kind of what programs you want from that university. So they know you're just not like reusing the essays, but you have to show that you've really taken the time to research those universities. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next question. When is the ideal time to start writing essays, and how many hours per week should we dedicate in writing them?
Um, okay. For me, well, I my dream school was Columbia. I didn't end up going to Columbia, but I thought about the topics like a year in advance. Or but if not, then I would start writing it during the summer, which is now. I really recommend that because I know a lot of people like write their dream colleges essays 6 months in advance, so right now, or summer in advance, but then they eventually end up like rushing the other ones in case they get deferred or waitlisted. So I wouldn't rush that. I would try to write as many essays as I can really before the January deadline because I will share my story. So basically um uh like my family is like all over the place in different countries, and this was like Decembers are really one of our only times together completely, but I couldn't have fun at all. Like I only I will tell you the story. On Christmas Day, um, I went to mass and then I had like a little lunch with my family, and the rest of the day was spent doing college essays. And I was doing that every day. The only day I didn't do it was even in New Year's, I was doing it. So literally, we were all around the table, my extended family and I was like on my laptop doing my essays. So I don't want you to do that. I just would rather have you write it in the span of 6 months than like all at once. Yeah. And I wouldn't. Sometimes like a lot of people don't have the same working style, so sometimes I would just have like my Yale essay finished the whole thing, like all the supplements in 3 days because I was just like really inspired. But then the Columbia essay took like 2 months. So I would just consistently work on it every day. But you don't have to have like a set time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I heard a lot of stories about working on your essays talaga during the holidays. So, Campground.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Okay, we have a few questions in the Q&A box. From an
Mhm.
anonymous attendee. Do you recommend mentioning the college's ethos in every essay, like even in Common App
Um,
essays?
I wouldn't be so obvious about it. I would maybe not, definitely not the common app essay because you usually want it to be like a little generic, but then the rest of the supplements, I would like sprinkle in little hints. Um, the like Yale has one of the best philosophy departments in the world. So I just like sprinkle that in that I like love philosophy, but then I wouldn't make it super obvious that I'm like, oh, I want to do a philosophy at Yale. I would just like sprinkle it in and then kind of show that even like these little hints, like try to be really subtle about it. Even in your supplements, make sure that you have these stories that show them that you have these qualities that fit that student, a student from that university, but then don't be like, Yale's ethos is blah, blah, blah. Like, just make it very subtle. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Next question.
Mhm.
Should I see feedback on my essays? If yes, who should or can I ask?
I have heard a lot of stories where people ask 20 people and now they're like really confused about who to listen to because everyone has an opinion. I would keep it to three. I honestly would just say three, but if you want four, people that you really, really trust. I showed my sister and my dad and my honestly, okay, I would say like a few people that you know you super, super well. And then also like one of your professors or one of yeah, your teachers that know you super well. Um, and then also one person that doesn't know you super well because it'll be interesting to see how it comes across to someone who doesn't know you well. So I would do that like kind of four as the golden number or three, but then make sure you add that one person who doesn't know you that well.
Okay, thanks. Next
Mhm.
question. What was the main theme in your Common App essay, and what aspect of it do you think stood out to the admissions officers the most?
Um, I'll talk about this really broadly, but I think I also fit like a specific profile that um like I feel like I did fit a specific profile of people that applied to Yale. Um and I think um it was like I'm talking about this really vaguely because it's like pretty personal, but I said how like I knew very early on that I what ethos of my life would be. I'm using that word so much, but what the ethos of my life would be in my career, which I think is pretty unique to an 17-year-old. So I was saying how people in the political science world are often very pessimistic, and it's often like much more honored in that world to be Machiavellian and really realist in the political science sense. But then I said, so now in this world, it takes courage to be idealistic. Um, and I was talking about how like people close to me had like different thoughts, people older, and how I like kept keeping that ethos and how I was going to keep that all throughout my life and in college. So I guess that's what stood out. It's like really general. I'm so sorry, but yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. Okay, next question. May I ask, what is the ideal length or maximum or minimum range of words for the essay? Thank you.
Um, I'd say it would differ for each, so I would just research on it. I mean, the Common App, um, I guess my big advice is that don't feel like you have to write as many words as possible or you have to reach the word limit for it to be a good essay. That's what I think, but obviously don't write a super short essay. Um, like, this is crazy, but like, yeah, I know like really like quirky essays, especially the U Chicago ones that would be like one line long or like two lines long, and they got into U Chicago. So like kind of those ones are like very, so it just really varies, but don't pressure yourself to write as much. But then I can't really answer that question because it's very specific to every college.
Okay, next question. Writing essays have always been something I dread, especially if it's for a reason as big as college applications. How can I make this process less daunting?
Um, I think that's like completely understandable, and everyone is going through that and has gone through that all throughout the year, so you're not alone. But I think just as I said, like use this time to reflect on yourself and don't put a lot of pressure at all on yourself because I honestly, when I was applying to Yale, because it's Yale, I thought I would never get in. So I just had the most fun writing that one. It was like very personal to me and very unique, and I feel like it was so authentic. And I have been a little bit of like a creative writer all throughout my life, so I feel like but that was the only essay or the only college that I really let my like true self and voice shine, and had the most fun with it. But in contrast to the Columbia essay that I said I was writing for like 2 months, I feel like I didn't have fun with that because I put so much pressure on myself to get into Columbia. So I would say just it's so annoying to say this, but just have fun with it and like don't pressure yourself because I feel like the more you pressure yourself, the worse it becomes. So try to have fun with the essay. If that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Next
Mhm.
question. Can I still write a good essay if I'm not fluent in English?
Of course, yeah. I would recommend honestly using Grammarly. It was really helpful because if you're looking at your essay for 3 hours or 4 hours at a time, then it's hard sometimes to catch grammatical errors. And I would also ask someone who, is has a larger prowess in English to look over it.
Okay. Another question. I'm so sorry for being late. So I don't know if this was already discussed, but for writing essays, are we given the freedom to choose our topics? And if so, what tips do you have for choosing the right topic?
So usually you do. The Common App essay, the eighth prompt is feel free to write anything about any right. Feel free to write anything you want to, essentially. So you do. I my biggest advice, it should just depend on each essay. So each essay is very specific, but I talked about each one in detail, kind of like the Common App essay has to be um, something that you, I guess, is like really an insight into who you are. Like, what is the biggest thing in my life? What is the biggest aspect of my life that I want to highlight? And then something you need space to write about. And then for the rest, for supplements, it has to be like more coordinated with the college's principles and then how it fits. Because I guess that's the biggest thing when you're choosing a topic. It has to like really match the goal that you want.
Okay. Next question. If you were to write your college essays again, what themes would you avoid writing for being too common and such?
Okay, I think since we're all like teenagers at the end of the day, we all pretty much have a lot of similar experiences. Like if you boil down my essay for Common App, I think it would just be like it could be like it could come across as like an angsty teen who like has different experiences and like wants to have a is like having this different type of like lifestyle and topic. But I guess the way I just twisted it is the most important. I would say like a lot of topics are overused, but is not the way it's written is like not unique to them. I think that's the biggest issue with essays. So for example, a thing that I get a lot is like, I'm so burnt out, blah blah blah, and like I was burnt out, but then I found my inspiration again. So when you like look at the letter S essay, that's kind of what she's also saying. Like I was burnt out, but then now I found a passion. But then the way she wrote about it was very unique. So it didn't seem really cliche. Um, I would avoid a lot of cliches like hard work beats talent. Like I would avoid that and saying that explicitly, but you can package it in a cool way. Um, I guess that's my biggest thing. Is like um, there are no overwritten essay topics, but the most important way is to package it well. Yeah.
Okay. I think we have three more questions. Is it
Yeah.
acceptable to mention triggering topics or terms in college essays?
Um, yes, you are able to, because um, yeah, I mean, the college admissions officers usually know that, especially the Common App essay is like your most personal essay. So, a lot of people are really vulnerable in those. So they completely understand that. But I also want to dispute something that I have like heard a lot in like the Reddit threads that you like always need a sad essay in your Common App essay. But usually, like, just be authentic to yourself. So if you, the most important aspect in your life um, is unfortunately tragic, then you can write about that. And but if it's not, then don't force yourself to write something like that. So just be very authentic to yourself.
Okay, two more questions. How can I address potential weaknesses or challenges in my application essay without sounding negative?
Mm. I think this is the same with like also job applications. You just like twist it in a way where like a weakness becomes a strength, um, or a challenge. So like every essay should be like how you overcame a challenge and how that reveals something about you. Or if you have a weakness, then like I hear like my biggest thing in college job applications is that, oh, I'm a workaholic, but like I work too much. But then that kind of sounds like a strength, so I have to like turn it in a way where it sounds like a strength all the time, and just yeah, turn that weakness and challenge into something that makes you stronger. Yeah.
Okay, one last question. Okay, you can pick any question from the Q&A actually.
Um, okay, I think I can run through this really quick. Actually, all of them. So, well, the first one is, do you think it's always necessary to sneakily mention your ECs in your Common App essay? No, because actually it's bad to, it's interesting how that girl mentioned like five of her ECs at the same time. I mentioned, I usually recommend like either just highlighting one EC in your essay that is most important to you. And like college admissions counselors hate that when you just dump your resume because they have that already. Like it's part of the application. So don't do that if it's not authentic to the essay. Um, and sometimes you don't even have to mention an EC. Because they already have that in the Common App application. There's a section for that. So don't if it's not necessary. And then, is it ethical to use AI tools like Chat GPT for grammar check? I would not, because I know that's probably, um, I would do Grammarly only because I think colleges now have a way of detecting if you use ChatGPT. So I wouldn't even risk it at all. I wouldn't use ChatGPT at all. And then the last one, are the essay prompts given in advance so we can make our essays earlier? Yes, I think they've already come out supposedly. I might be wrong about that, but you should check the Common App prompts, the websites. Check the websites as soon as possible to see if they're out. Okay, that's like a lightning. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Razel, for okay, that brings us for the end of our Q&A session. If you guys have any questions, please put your contact info, Razel, in the chat box if you're
Oh yeah,
comfortable
sure.
with it.
Okay, I will just put my Facebook and
Okay.
then if that's okay. Yeah, that should be okay for everyone, right? Or should I also put my email?
No, whichever you're comfortable with.
Okay, I'll just put my Facebook since, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Um, please rest assured that we have many more sessions and opportunities for you guys to address your study abroad questions and concerns. So on behalf of CAMP's 2023 facilitation team, I would like to extend our sincerest gratitude and appreciation to you for sharing with us your valuable insights today. We are deeply grateful for your time, effort, and commitment in preparing and delivering such an impactful talk. Round of applause naman for Razel, everyone.
Yay,
Okay,
thank you. Thank you so much for
thank
having
you.
me and good luck everyone. I hope you all get into the colleges of your dreams. Yay.
Thank you so much for coming. Before we move on to our next session, let's have a 5-minute break, everyone. Thank you for coming.